Hey folks, I'll tell you what, this is the third time I've started this video, and every time I started talking, Roger the turkey would wander over here and start gobbling every time I started doing my thing. So, originally this video was going to be about permaculture principles. You guys may get to see a turkey getting killed if he comes by and does it again. Yeah, I'm watching you. Stay over there and be quiet. Alright. Looks like him and Teddy are going back around to the back of the house now. Anyway, this video is going to be about the 12 permaculture principles. So stick around. I think you'll enjoy it. Hey, welcome back to Grumpy Acres. I am constantly amazed at how few people actually know what permaculture is, or have even just a slight understanding about what it involves. You know, if you're watching this video, chances are that people in your circle already know a little bit about permaculture, and you guys talk the lingo, you know, at least conversational in it, as Billy Bond might say. You get outside your circles, though, and I think you'd be amazed, too, at how few people even know what permaculture is. So to that end, I thought that I would start a series of videos just kind of going over the basics of permaculture and giving a 10,000-foot view of it. If you want to do more of a deep dive, there's hundreds of videos out there, thousands of videos out there that go into in-depth about permaculture, and you can go watch them to your heart's content. And if we get done with the basic series and you guys want more, I can see about putting together something, maybe interviewing some people. I think that'd be kind of fun. But until then, we're just going to do basics. I mean, nothing deep, nothing really groundbreaking or earth-shattering. The very first video we're going to do is about the 12 principles of permaculture, and these principles are basically what guides the ethos. All right. Let's take a look at them. Excuse me. The first principle is observe and interact. We should know the processes that happen on our landscape, and we should interact with it, get out and walk it, and observe what happens. And we should do this observation in all 4 seasons, because without understanding how energy flows across our property, and that's all nature is. Nature, in every single form, is just energy. The sun rains energy down on the planet. The plants turn it into vegetable matter. Animals take the vegetable matter, eat it, turn it into food. The wind blows across our property. That's energy. Water falls from the sky and flows across the property, and that's all energy. And all we're trying to do is use that energy to our benefit. And the only way we can figure out how to do that is to observe what happens on our property and interact with our property. It means get out and walk it. The second principle is catch and store energy. You know, I just said that everything that happens on our property is energy. Well, in order to utilize that energy, we need to capture it. When it flows off our property unclaimed, it does us absolutely no good. So capturing energy could be things like putting up a windmill to capture wind, turning it into electrical energy, building a swell or a retention pond to catch the water flowing off grade and storing that energy up for future use. Rain catchment on the building, that's catching energy. You know, we're storing up that water for future use. You know, and the higher the water, gravity will increase its energy. You know, so we're capturing that energy, and we're taking it and we're turning it from kinetic energy into potential energy. All right, and kinetic energy is energy in motion, and potential energy is energy not in motion, basically. So, as an example, the rain's falling out of the sky. That's kinetic energy. The water's falling down. And we capture that energy in the form of a retention pond or a swell that allows it to stop and soak in where it is, rehydrate the land, or to be saved up for future use. Same with rain catchment. Well, ponds are rain catchment, but rain catchment can also be a rain barrel. Same with wind. Wind is just energy flowing across our property, and we take that kinetic energy and we turn it into potential energy by capturing it with the windmill, putting it in a battery, and saving it for future use as electrical energy. All right, so that's everything we're doing here is capturing energy. We get the grass to grow because it captures that sunlight and it holds it as potential energy that can be used by the animals further down the road. Firewood. Firewood is potential energy. The tree grows and that's kinetic. We saw it up into logs and then we burn it in our fireplace, which turns it back into kinetic energy for our use. So that's capturing and storing energy. The third principle is obtain a yield. Now, so we've captured and we stored all that energy. Now we need to obtain a yield. We need to turn all that energy into something that we can use. We grow our grass. We cut our hay and we put up hay for the winter. We harvest our garden. We harvest fruit trees. Some yields are short term. Our summer gardens. Those once summer's gone, those hot weather plants are gone until next year. Fruit trees and nut trees, that's more long term. Those are year after year after year. Annuals versus perennials. But we're always looking to obtain a yield, and it's twofold. Number one, it keeps us motivated, right? I don't know if you've ever had a failed garden. It can be really disheartening, or you've had plants that you tended to that died for whatever reason. It can be disheartening. So we want to keep our morale up. And the second reason is obtaining a yield allows us to store it for future use. How are we going to feed our animals through the winter? We have to obtain a yield so we can store it up. The fourth principle is apply self-regulation and listen to feedback. So applying self-regulation is we don't want to deplete our resources. We don't want to strip the land barren in our. So our purpose in doing this is to ensure that we've got land and an ecosystem that's viable in the future. All right. And then we also, as we're enriching that, we want to listen to feedback, because that's how we learn what needs to be done. If our soil is getting too acidic, we can see that in the plants that we've got there, and we can adjust the soil. We can listen to the feedback. A prime example of listening to feedback here at Grumpy Acres recently was the chickens were getting into the garden. And so the feedback on that was all our cabbage was getting eaten. And I ignored it, and I ignored it, and I ignored it. And eventually it got to the point where it looked like our cabbage was going to die. So I ended up having to put a fence up. That was responding to feedback. Since then, the plants have rebounded, and the garden's doing great. So we need to pay attention to our land. And we get that feedback that goes back to the principle number one. We observe and interact, and we're looking for that feedback, and then we respond to the feedback. The fifth principle is use renewable resources and service. Now what that means is we don't want a one-and-done solution for anything. Any solution that we have needs to be long-term and can be renewed. Our firewood. We don't want to cut all our trees down. We want to be able to renew them, and as we're taking trees out, we need to plant more trees. We want to make sure that we're enriching that soil so that the perennial grasses that are on our hayfield will come back time and time again, instead of being used once and not being able to be used again. So we need to look at everything around us and decide, okay, is this reusable? Is this resource renewable? Can it be regrown? Can it be reincorporated into the ground? That's all important. The sixth principle is produce no waste. And that primarily pertains to our gardens, right? It goes beyond that, but let's talk about gardens for just a second. So a permaculture garden produces no waste. Anything that comes out of the garden, whether it's in the form of weeds being taken out of the garden, or if it's food being taken out of the garden, none of it goes to waste. It all goes back into the system. The weeds, they can be composted, along with any leftover food. They can be composted. Or the weeds can be thrown into the goat and sheep pen or the cow pen or whatever, and used as a supplement for their feed. Leftover food, if you're not composting it, you can feed it to the animals. I know our chickens love leftovers. When the pigs we had at the last place, they got all kinds of leftovers. So we want to produce no waste. Now, another aspect of producing no waste is the amount of physical modern day waste that we have. And as an American culture, we live in a throwaway society, and we're used to just getting rid of stuff. And I know you've seen the big burn piles that we've had. That's all waste that they had on this property that was not used, was not stored properly, and quite frankly, 99% of it is unusable. It's rotten. It's full of chemicals. It's not usable. So we burn it off. Hopefully, once I get this property cleaned up, there'll be no more big burn piles. In fact, the only time I should be burning anything is if I'm trying to make charcoal for biomatter, or actually making charcoal for cooking on. Because once we get settled in, I'm going to be making my own charcoal. I'm not going to buy charcoal from the store anymore. You know, so those are the only times we should be doing that. I've got the great big metal pile back there. That's all waste. Thankfully, Darren is teaching me how to look at some of that stuff to be reused. You know, we can recycle it. That's helping not produce any waste by recycling. Unfortunately, a lot of it is going to go to the metal scrappers. But our entire purpose, or not our purpose, our intent on the homestead should be to produce as little waste as possible, so that we can recapture that energy that was used in making it, or we can reuse it to keep it from cluttering up the land in a landfill, or just laying around like it is here. The seventh principle is design pattern to detail. And what that means is we're looking at the patterns that happen in nature, and we're mimicking them, and we're designing those patterns into the details of our plants. Water flows downhill in nature. So we know that, so we take that pattern and we build swells to capture it and rehydrate the land. We're putting that pattern in. Nature automatically companion plants. Plants that are beneficial to each other grow next to each other in nature. So when we're designing our gardens, or we're designing our food forests, we're looking for plants that are complementary to each other, that will help each other grow. And we fit those plans, or we fit those details into our long-term plans. Principle number 8 is integrate rather than segregate. And that goes back to what I was just talking about, companion planting. We want to integrate as many of these ecosystems together as possible. You know, we want the ruminant herd to be up next to some trees that really grow fast, because we can use that as fodder. We want a companion plant in the garden, the three sisters. That's a classic example of companion planting. There's other things too with companion planting. You can put your nitrogen fixers next to your fruit trees, which will help them grow and be abundant. And just, it's really important to understand that these systems all integrate with each other. Nature does not naturally have a vacuum when it comes to these systems. You've got several systems on top of each other. Principle number 9 is use small solutions. So what that means is we're not looking for one big fix-it solution. We want a series of small solutions that build upon each other to create a long-term solution to the problem. Like I said before, modern monoculture is a one-stop all. That we look at the bean field that's across the road from me. They're going to monoplant beans in there, and when they're done, that field's there's going to be a vacuum. There's not going to be anything productive there, and that field is going to fill full of weeds over the course of the summer or the winter time till next summer. And they'll be out here, they'll disc it up, and then they'll spray some sort of chemical on it, and they'll start all over again, applying fertilizers and all that. So we want small slow solutions that lead to bigger ones. All right, they build on each other. Number 10, I guess that would be 10, is use and value diversity. We want to plant a variety of crops on our property so that we've got a very diverse ecosystem. And we don't want to rely on just one type of animal. The whole purpose of the chicken tractor and the sheep tractor, or the sheep shaw, is that we can stick both those animals on the same field, and they will follow each other around and they will benefit each other. So we're using the diversity of those animals to enrich the land and make it more productive. So you can look all over the place and see diversity in nature. You know, you see animals coexisting with each other. You see all kinds of plants. You've got the seven layers of the forest. You know, are just the more diversity there is, the more bountiful the property is. So the 11th principle in permaculture is use of edges. So part of the design plan in permaculture is to use as much of the property as possible. And we want to utilize areas that aren't normally thought of as being productive. And those are the edges. Those are where one type of ecosystem meets another type, as in your pasture where it meets the woods. So you're going to get the greatest abundance along that edge because you're going to have the biggest diversity of ecosystem there. You want to look at different types of edges. Example, you know, look at a suburban house. You've got your driveway and you've got a strip of land and you've got another driveway. That's an edge. A lot of people won't do anything there. In fact, in a lot of locales, they won't let you, by ordinance, use the edge there. You know, we've been conditioned to look in this very narrow spectrum of what we consider usable, and we need to start expanding our view of that and what's usable. You know, going vertical is using an edge, that isn't usually used. So we need to think of that. You need to look for edges and figure out ways to leverage them into abundance. The 12th and final principle is to creatively use and adapt to change. And what that means is our goal is to work with nature and not against it. And change is always going to happen. So whenever these changes happen in nature, we need to embrace them, and we need to figure out how to use them to our benefit. You know, a case example, a grass fire. Grass fire could wipe out your pasture, destroy your pasture. Well, you could use the extra fertility that grass fire is going to provide to help grow different crops in there if you want. You could change it into something you've been wanting to change it, or reseed it and just make it more abundant. Use that extra fertility to increase yield on that field. You know, but it's a matter of instead of looking at change as a setback, which is human nature, we need to look at it and embrace it and make it better. Okay, I know I keep going back to the chickpea fire. You know, that was a huge change that completely destroyed our plans. 6 months worth of plans gone in a day. We embraced it, and we looked at it, and we thought about how we could improve our process. And since we're starting over, we get a chance to do things the right way. We changed the design of the chicken coop. We changed the design of the brooder area. Now we've got 2 separate buildings, and our brooder is actually bigger than it was in that other building. You know, so just any number of things can be done with change, and we just have to embrace it and look at it positively. All right, that's the first video in our permaculture series, 12 Principles of Permaculture. I hope that I didn't confuse anybody too terribly bad with my explanations of them. I'm trying to hone my permaculture chops more before I start actually doing some consultant work. You know, if you're in the Midwest and you'd like to get on the slot for having one of those done, go ahead and there's an email in on our About page on YouTube. You can go to our Facebook page and you can contact us there, and we'll see if we can't work something out. I hope that by doing these videos that people can see that I understand it and we're able to put it into practice for them. And quite frankly, you know, telling you guys about this stuff just makes me better at it, and that's what it's all about. We're always looking to improve. You know, if you like the video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. If you got any comments about the 12 permaculture principles, or you've got any questions about them, feel free to ask below. I'll answer them to the best of my ability, and if I can't get you an answer, I will put you in touch with somebody that can give you the answer. All right? Share this with anybody that you think might find it interesting or enjoyable. Most of all, go out there and try to put some of these principles into action on your homestead, on your property, in your apartment. Try to put them into action today. All right. Until next time, folks, I want you guys to go out and live a life done free.
Thanks, Milo.